The fire alarm wiring method is the most important aspect of a fire safety system. It determines how the system will perform in case of a fire. There are two main types of fire alarm wiring, a Class A loop and a Class B loop. The first type is the traditional wire loop. The redundant wire is a redundant loop that goes around a broken wire. This type of wiring keeps most devices connected. The second type of fire alarm wiring method uses two separate unsupervised loops. The first one is the original Class A loop, while the other backfeeds on a separate pair of wires. The non-power limited circuit is an alternative to the power limited method. It limits the current to 600 volts and has no current limit. It is treated like a power circuit, and must be wired with the same wiring methods. The non-power limited type of fire alarm wiring is called the non-power limited type, and it is permitted to use a different insulation and conductor size. The limit for 14 AWG is part of the Article 760 standard. The Class A fire alarm wiring method allows the return wires to be close to the feed wires. However, this approach can lead to damage in case of a fire. It is also possible to use the same conduit for the return wires, and the same wiring type. This method of fire alarm installation is more expensive than the other two, but it will be more reliable. It will also save you money. You will not have to worry about a fire. If the building has a fire alarm requirement, you should make sure that all smoke detectors have the same method of installation. The most common method of installation is the 4-wire system. The other type is a 2-wire system. If one is on the ceiling, the other can be mounted on the ceiling. The only difference between these two methods is the size of the wires used to connect the two systems. The most important factor is the location of the fire detectors. The signal line method is the most common way to install a fire alarm system. In the NFPA 72 standard, signal line circuits are designed to receive and transmit signals from multiple devices. In addition, a single line is not sufficient for a fire alarm system. Generally, the signal line circuit should be located as close to the panel as possible. A separate circuit should be run to each device. The power supply should be a separate branch. There are two types of fire alarm wiring. The Class A method involves using a fire alarm device that is programmable. The other class is the one that is non-programmable. This type is not considered safe, but it is still acceptable. The non-power limited version has many advantages. It is easy to install, but it requires proper planning and installation. You must have the proper electrical panel. There is no room for a GFCI in the same room. The conventional fire alarm wiring method wires each floor as a zone. Each device would be connected to a separate panel. Each zone of the building would be on separate circuits, while all the devices together would be on one panel. The main control panel would trigger the entire office. Alternatively, the conventional method uses a single wire for the entire system. If the wiring is already present, the fire panel can be connected to the existing circuits as well. A Class A fire alarm wire has 2 wire paths. Each fire alarm cable can be either 4 or 6. The Class A loop is more costly and can be complicated to install, but it is safer. Nevertheless, both methods are recommended. While the fire alarm wiring methods are different, each one should be supervised. In the event of a fault, a panel must restore the trouble message. If this is not the case, the system should be reset. The two types of fire alarm wiring methods differ slightly. The Class A pathway requires that the fire alarm cables be run underground, but it is still a requirement for all types of systems to have a return path. This is a standard requirement for all fire alarm wires. It is important to remember that the fire alarm wiring method is not governed by the building's construction. The system can be a standard in its wiring style, and it may be used for any purpose.